Hi everyone, my name's Sarah McBride. I'm the National Press Secretary at the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest LGBTQ civil rights organization, and I'm the author of Tomorrow Will Be Different, Love, Loss, and the Fight for Trans Equality. I want to thank you all for taking the time to read this book and to meet to discuss it. I wrote Tomorrow Will Be Different to share my own journey as a transgender advocate and as a transgender woman, and to offer a glimpse into the unfinished work of the transgender community. I think so often we lose the humanity behind the issues that we see in the news and debate in our politics. And I wanted to reinforce for people that behind this national conversation on transgender equality are real people who love and laugh, hope and dream, fear and cry just like everyone else. We are at a really critical point in the fight for transgender equality. Over the previous decade, we have made historic progress in both legal and particularly social equality for transgender people. Visibility for our community was on the rise and continues to be on the rise. And more states are passing inclusive laws like my own home state of Delaware, which I talk about in the book. But we also know that in recent years, in too many cases, hate has been emboldened. Prejudices that existed have been given a license to exist in the daylight in ways that for a while they were relegated to the darkness. Right now, we are seeing an increase in hate-based violence against the transgender community, particularly transgender women of color. We're seeing a number of attacks at the state level on the rights and dignity of transgender people. And of course, since the last election, we have seen a number of attacks on transgender equality at the federal level, from the rescinding of life-saving guidance promoting the protection of transgender students by this federal administration, to the reinstatement of a ban on transgender people serving openly in the military. But I also think over the last several years, we have seen the courage and the momentum of our movement continue at an unparalleled rate. We continue every single time they come for us to educate this country, to have a conversation with this country that opens hearts, changes minds, and in the end sows the seeds of the destruction of the politics of hate that these anti-equality politicians seek to implement. And one of the things, apologies for the noise in the background, one of the things that I have learned over the last several years as a transgender person and advocate is that change is and always will be possible. And I'm reminded of a lesson that I learned in the last month of Andy's life, which is that, as my brother told me, this is going to be incredibly difficult, referring to that time. But take stock in the acts of amazing grace that will fill your life. And that experience, and frankly, in writing this book, which in many ways was a journey back to hope for me after the last election, I was reminded that all of us, even in the darkest moments and even in the most troubling times, we can all bear witness to acts of amazing grace. It reminded me that hope only makes sense in the face of hardship. And it is through those acts of amazing grace, it is through that unending hope and that unparalleled resolve that the transgender community and the LGBTQ community more broadly has done what was once impossible. We have moved equality forward for people across this nation in ways that once seemed unimaginable. We have done what every single movement for civil and human rights has done throughout our history. We've transformed impossibility into possibility into reality. But of course, we're far from finished. After all, the fundamental truth remains that no one in the transgender community or LGBTQ community is totally equal until all of us, from the gay Muslim refugee to the queer undocumented immigrant to the transgender woman of color living right here in Wilmington, Delaware, where I live, or really anywhere across this country, until all of us are treated with dignity and fairness. But that day will come. I remain as hopeful as ever. And I want to do a brief reading for you all, a section of the book that discusses my experience after it sounds ridiculous, took a selfie in a bathroom in North Carolina. And it's a passage and it's a lesson that I carry with me throughout my advocacy, and it's one that has given me a lot of strength in some of the darkest moments. And so after I took the selfie in North Carolina. The selfie in this bathroom went viral, and I received an incredible amount of hate, including physical threats and death threats that shook me to my core. And I was worried that I couldn't do this work anymore. And so I wrote about the experience and the lessons that I learned. And I want to share it with you. And if you haven't read the book, here's a bit of a section. The kind of hate that I experienced was an occupational hazard. At least for the time being, it was a reality of the world we live in. If I were to continue, I'd have to figure out a way to get past it or to be miserable. And then one day, after listening to a story about a reporter who had embraced her weight publicly and faced a serious online backlash because of it, something clicked. It's trite to say that many of the biggest bullies are often LGBTQ themselves and in the closet. It may be true in some cases, but it glosses over a more universal truth that underlies the pervasiveness of anti-LGBTQ hate. Surely not everyone who bullies is in the closet, but everyone does have some kind of insecurity. Whether it's your sexual orientation, your gender identity, how you look, what you sound like, what you do for a living, or any other multitude of characteristics, everyone struggles with something that society has told them is wrong. But as LGBTQ people, we have had the courage to embrace something that many people think we should be ashamed of. We have stood up and decided to live our truth not just from a place of authenticity, but so often from a place of pride. We have exercised our own individual agency and power to overcome what was once an insecurity, to hold our heads high and proclaim, "This is who I am, and there is nothing wrong with me." And the bullies see that. They see our power and they are jealous of it. They envy the agency we have been able to exercise and the clear power we hold. So often that is where their hate and vitriol come from. We are powerful. In Delaware, I had to learn the power of my own voice. Now I needed to understand the power of my own identity, of LGBTQ lives to move forward. Society can't make me feel voiceless when I know the power of my own voice. And society can't make me feel weak when I know that I am powerful just by being. So with that, I just want to thank you all for being who you are, for taking the time to read this book, and remind you that you are powerful. You are powerful just by being, and that means that together we are unstoppable. So thank you all very much and enjoy the conversation.